Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 834 of the Juicebox Podcast. Guess what, everybody? Erika Forsyth is back. That's right, your favorite licensed marriage and family therapist is here again today. Today, I start the conversation off with Erika by asking her to talk about a sentence that I hear spoken very frequently. People love to say, I don't let diabetes get in my way. I'm not letting diabetes slow me down. Hear it all the time. And I hear it two different ways when people say it to me. And Erika and I talk through it. And then at some point, we talk about how to change things. And then it just goes down a slippery slope of my internal workings of my mind. So that'll be fun. You can sit in on a therapy session with me at the end. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you like Erika and you'd like to hire her and you live in California, Utah, Oregon, or Florida, she's at erikaforsyth.com. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Touched by Type 1. Head now to touchedbytype1.org and also find them on Facebook and Instagram. When you get to these locations, you're going to find an organization doing an immense amount of good for people living with type 1 diabetes. Go see what they're all about. touchedbytype1.org. The podcast is also sponsored today by my favorite blood glucose meter, the Contour Next One. And you're going to find out way more about the Contour Next One than you ever thought possible at contournext.com/juicebox.
Okay.
So, all right. So we're recording.
Okay.
Erika, before we get started, I have a growing list of things I'd like to talk to you about. And I thought maybe it would be interesting to just let you pick on the day.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds good.
Okay. So here's what I have already. You and I have already talked about. So I don't know if you know this, but when I think of things, I go into this little note and I put like ideas in. So like I put in magical thinking one day and you and I did an episode about that. Mom guilt. We did that one. But since then, I've put in Maslow's pyramid. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. I put in scarcity mindset. I put in charitable interpretations. I put in what the principle of charity and critical thinking is. I'm sorry, this jumps all over the place. How to support suicidal people. I want to talk about the statement that people make that says, I don't let diabetes slow me down. I want to talk about how people interact with each other online. I want to talk about rebellion as like a human decision. Like what happens to a person's mind when they say like, my mom wants me to do this, so I'm going to do the opposite. Like I'm fascinated by that. And just life expectations. Like how does it impact your life when you paint a picture for yourself and then it starts to deviate immediately? Because it will. I also have on here how to share burdens. Like when you have a burden, how do you learn to share it with somebody? And then people diagnosed with type 1 as an adult, how they could find community, engage their partners for support and things like that. So that's my list so far. Do you have a choice for today?
Oh my goodness. That's an exciting and extensive list.
We got to keep you busy. You got this new microphone.
I know.
Listen, everybody, Erika bought a nice microphone, so we're going to give her a lot to do.
It's exciting. It's good stuff. Goodness, where do we want to start? Do you have a leaning? I think
I will tell you this.
Go
ahead. If we started to talk about anything off this list, I'd start getting ramped up and want to talk about it. So it doesn't matter to me. But what's been on my list the longest for you, maybe we could do it that way. I think the statement about not letting diabetes slow me down is really interesting to me.
I was leaning towards that, or how to share, like the burden piece, I think is a topic that comes up quite frequently, particularly with caregivers. So yeah, either one of those
let's start,
I think would be most relevant.
With the statement. We'll see where it goes. Maybe we'll get to two of them today, or maybe the next time you come on, we'll do that. So I'm not going to need any notes for this. I'm not going to need the internet. This is all just anecdotal for me. So I'll begin by saying that when I first heard somebody say, I don't let diabetes slow me down, I thought, that's amazing. This is a person who's saying, I have this thing, but I do everything I want to do, and it doesn't get in my way. I thought, what a beautiful statement. And then I started interviewing more and more people. And I started to realize that for some of those people, what that statement means is, even though I have diabetes, what I do is I ignore it, and then I just do whatever I want. And in their mind, they're not letting diabetes get in their way. Does that resonate with you as a person who has type 1?
I think it could really go both ways. I think there's the avoidance kind of, I'm going to ignore it and not let it stop me from doing what I want. And by that, you're not actively managing it. Mm-hmm. Or there is the hyper focus, hyper management. You really truly can do, quote, whatever you want, eat whatever you want, exercise however you want. And you figured it out. And while there is parts of your life that diabetes interferes with, for the most part, you view your narrative of your life is, I'm living my life and I have diabetes, but it doesn't stop me. So I think it can go both ways.
Right. And I think that broadly and mostly, it's a great mindset. Like, absolutely the way to go. Like, this thing's not going to stop me. But if it's stopping you, ignoring it and just trudging on is not the answer. I interview people every day. Just this week, 12-year-old, when she's diagnosed, and she said it. She's like, I never let it stop me. I played this many sports in school, and I did all this, and I did that. And then the last 30 minutes of our conversation are about the injection she's getting in her eyes, and she can't feel her feet. And, like, what she meant was, I just kept going, which is admirable, by the way, beyond admirable, honestly. But there's a way to learn about diabetes and to corral it and work with it so that you can really go do whatever you want without it hurting you while it doesn't need to be a trade-off. And I don't know, like, I've never heard, it's the one statement that sticks out in my head, because no matter which side of this scenario I hear people speak about it, they say it the same exact way. That's the part that fascinates me. I don't let diabetes get in my way. And that can come out of a person's mouth who has a 5.2 A1C and knows how to keep their blood sugars between 70 and 140 all day. And that same proud statement can come out of someone's mouth who has an 11 A1C for their whole life.
I was just thinking, I wonder what the difference is internally between that sense of kind of healthy pride and maybe maybe shame, right? Like the person who is not managing and says, I don't let diabetes get in my way. I'm guessing there might be some shame. There might be some anger, disappointment. I can't process what this means to live with this chronic illness. And so I'm just going to ignore it. And I'm not going to let it stop me, but I'm ignoring it. And you might feel awful, probably physically, emotionally. Whereas the person who's saying with pride, like, I can do this, I imagine they probably feel pretty good about themselves. They've done the work. They figured it out. They have the skill set. They have the tools. They have the availability to have all the things that you need to manage well. So there, even though maybe it's coming out the same way, I'm guessing that probably internally the narrative is a little different.
Yeah. So one side is like genuine pride and just like, wow, I can't believe I've accomplished this. And the other side might be a mask. It might be, yes, I'm being beaten by this thing, but I'm going to go on like it's not happening. And, yes, and then there's pride in that, I imagine, too, and that's not misplaced. Like, if you're just like, look, it's like you're in a movie and you get shot and you're like, some people are like, go on without me, I'm going to lay here and die. And some of the characters are like, I'm going to do it. And they pick themselves up and they're dragging the bad leg. And I think of it, that's how I think of it sometimes. Like, you're injured and you should stop and tend to yourself. And it is brave to just drag your leg on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it'd be better if you just stopped, like stop for a second and figure this thing out so that you can make that statement from that place of pride instead of from a place of, I know I'm being beaten. I'm just going to be tougher than this, because eventually you can't be tougher than it at some point. And I think that's one of the problems with type 1, type 2 as well, honestly, is that you can pretend you're doing okay for a while right up until you're not, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think it is actually prevalent. Now you mentioned type 2. It is prevalent in the type 2 community as well, because you have lived a certain way. I mean, there are different ages of diagnosis, but for the general population who are diagnosed as adults with type 2, it's hard to shift your way of thinking, eating, lifestyle. And it's really challenging to, I think of actually the gentleman you had on with type 2, and it was really hard for him to accept. Is there a connection between I'm not going to let it stop me and acceptance of what does this mean to live with this diagnosis for type 1, type 2, that interferes with how do I take care of myself? Do I want to take care of myself? How do I take care of myself? And if there's all the things, lack of resources, accessibility, support, community, family, all of those things that we need to continue to thrive, those interfere, with that ability to function and accept it.
I mean, honestly, type 1 almost does you a favor by just stopping taking care of yourself. It really does force you to do something. And then it's that level of understanding that dictates, is this a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, 9, 10? Like, what is my A1C? What's my average blood sugar? With type 2, you can ignore it for a good long time, and you may feel tired, and then of course get accustomed to feeling tired, and then something else might happen. You get accustomed to it, and it'll hit you, all at once, when it's probably too late. Which is the reason why I bring this up, because this is, all of this talk aside, it's a very human reaction to say I'm not giving up. It's so laudable, and it's why we're all here probably still. Now, I've joked before that if I was on the Mayflower, we'd live somewhere east of the first river we came on, because I'd be like, I can't get over that. We're done. Let's just make a house right here. But other people see that river and they think like, no, most people, we're going to climb over it. We're going to get into a wagon and go from here to Oregon. Are you kidding me? As safe as the world is right now, if I told you to walk to Oregon, you'd be like, I'm not doing that.
That's right.
I said, no, the life that you dream of, Erika, it's a 3,000 mile.
There.
Yeah, you'd be like, no, it's all right. I'm good right where I'm at. It's so that there's something about people. It's wonderful, right? But then you put it in this exact situation, and what starts out as, and what is mostly a great trait that will get you through life, turns into the thing it's stabbing you in the back, and you don't realize it right away. I've never heard one person say it and not mean it, if that makes sense. I don't let diabetes slow me down. I don't let diabetes get in my way. Like, they always mean it. And so I don't know, so what do you do if you're listening to this and you find yourself thinking, I feel like that. I feel like nothing stops me. I accomplish everything I want, but the guy talking, he's on to something. My A1C is like 8.5. How do you shift that mindset to put that energy, that desire to triumph? How do you put it into the place where you might actually figure out how do you take care of yourself better?
I think the answer depends on from which lens, who the age. Is it the caregiver? Is it the teenager? Oftentimes, I think if you're a teen and thinking that you have this sense of, they often don't feel like they're invincible. It's hard to think of forward, complications. And you're kind of in the moment. And so for a teenager, it's hard. It's hard to get them to that place of understanding of how to take care of yourself. I think there's I would go underneath what is interfering with that process of acceptance, of understanding that, you know what, I really do need to take care of myself. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I think it is, maybe there isn't a connection to, did you process the diagnosis? Are you still carrying anger, unresolved anger? Are you trying to figure out your identity as a teenager, in spite of, but also connected to your diabetes? And oftentimes I think I keep bringing up this acceptance, and I think that's one of the things also on your list of, what does that really mean to accept it? It is a process, but part of that, what it means to accept, is to integrate it into your life and know that, you can live a healthy life, but you can't ignore it.
Do you talk ever about optimism bias?
Yes, I think that's a really good go ahead. I think that's a really interesting thought.
There's part of me that wants to take the list of all the biases that humans have and just do a series about them. And the problem is, I've tried a couple of times. You can never find somebody who really is like, I could really dig in on this one. You know what I mean? I'm like, because I want to have that conversation. But an optimism bias, just as it's defined, a cognitive bias that causes someone to believe that they themselves are less likely to experience a negative event. It is also known as an unrealistic optimism or comparative optimism. Optimism bias is common throughout people. It's saying, doesn't matter your nationality, your ethnicity, your age, that it's a common feeling. And it's what I'm talking about. It's that it's me watching my father smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day and him saying, like, it's not getting me. And then that's what kills him. Because right up until it did, he's like, I went to the doctor. Doctor said, I always used to feel angry about this. Doctor told me he can't even tell I'm a smoker. And I used to think he can't smell that you smell like 4 ashtrays rubbed on a hot day's foot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or,
right.
But maybe the doctor never said that. But my dad would come home and say that. Like, they'd say they can't even tell. And eventually, he had congestive heart failure and he died. And so, but why is that? Like, why do we see the old lady on the news who lived to 100? And in our minds, we're all like, that'll be me. Meanwhile, it's so rare, they got to put her on the news. Right. I don't know why. I don't understand why common sense doesn't take over and say to you, I'm not going to be that person. I don't know if I've shared this with you, but as my mom had health issues as she's gotten older over the last couple of years, I went to my wife very earnestly and I said, I'm 51. And I said, I am going to begin treating the next 15 years like they are the last 15 years I have. I was like, and then everybody right away is like, oh, no, you're going to. I'm like, I didn't say I was going to die when I was 65.
Right.
I said, I'm going to treat the next 15 years like they're the last ones. Because the last 6 years of my mom's life have not been, she hasn't been at the water park. You know what I mean? But we all feel that way. We're like, oh, if I live to 80, in your mind, you imagine that on your 80th day when you drop dead, you're in the backyard playing croquet with a brandy. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just hit a couple balls, and then over. It doesn't work that way for everybody. Everybody doesn't get to be the lady on the news. And I don't know how that thinking isn't obvious and how it doesn't translate to health, because that's all I think about when I think about my kids' health. This is it. We need to figure this out now because later's too late and damage is happening. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but that's
I think that's because you're a realist, but you also have an optimistic, hopeful outlook in life. You're not a pessimist. You're not,
right.
Doom and gloom. But I think you're able to apply. You have that sense of hope, and you want to give your children a long, healthy life, and you're able to apply that and say, okay, but we need to be realistic with what we need to do in order to have as long of a life as possible. And I think we all have a sense of, optimism and hope that we are going to live a healthy, long life. But what we're trying to figure out is what is the difference between those who have that hope but ignore reality versus those who have that hope and can attend to like your current immediate needs.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we're trying to differentiate between those two. And I think the bias piece, we all have certain biases and distortions that we believe. And part of, becoming attuned to your way of thinking and acting and living in your behaviors is understanding some of those, biases and distortions.
So is that done in therapy?
Well, yes, it can be done in therapy.
We can't just talk somebody into right now, like throwing a little cold water in their face and saying, I'm probably not going to be okay 30 years from now with my 9A1C.
Well, I think as you know, I definitely appreciate the value of cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's understanding how our thoughts affect how we feel, which obviously impact what we do. Mm-hmm. And that can go, it's the cognitive triangle. We can start with our actions, which impact how we feel, which impact how we think about ourselves. It can go at any which way. And so part of the initial work that I do with a lot of my clients is understanding what are those lies, is the easiest way to call them, that we believe about ourselves or about our world that impact what we do and how we feel. And then we want to break down those lies or distortions and replace them with truths.
Yes.
So that is something you can do, yes, in therapy.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of the things that I know aren't true about myself that I lie to myself about. As you were saying that, I was like, oh, I have some of those.
Like what? Do you want to share?
I don't care. Today I'm going to tell you about the Contour NEXTONE blood glucose meter. If you're using insulin, you need a great, accurate meter. You need the Contour NEXTONE. I'm going to go to the website. Let me just type here, contournext.com/juicebox. My voice just does that when I anyway. When you get there, you're going to see a lot of information. Big buy now button, where if you click on it, I'll click on it now. It takes you to a number of places online where you can get the Contour and the test strips. Walmart.com, Amazon, Walgreens, CVS Pharmacy, Meijer, Kroger, Target, Rite Aid. Here's the thing. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just continue to do your meter stuff the way you usually do? Because the Contour NEXTONE may be cheaper in cash out of your pocket than through your insurance. This is something worth checking into. Now, why would you go to that trouble? Because you say to me, Scott, I already have a meter. I don't care. But you should care, because the Contour NEXTONE is super easy to use and incredibly accurate. And those are important things. Important. They are so important that I am here to tell you about it over and over and over again, so that you will go to contournext.com/juicebox and get yourself a great meter that has second chance test strips, so that if you don't get quite enough blood the first time, no big deal, right back and you're doing it again without wasting the strip or ruining the test accuracy. contournext.com/juicebox. Get the meter that my daughter has been using for years. The meter that has a super bright light for nighttime viewing, an absolutely easy to read and simple screen, and a design that allows you to easily carry it and hold it. This is it. I don't need to tell you more. Super accurate, super easy to use, great light, second chance test strips, might be cheaper in cash than you're paying for insurance. I don't know what else you want. contournext.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. And I'll throw in here a little extra for good luck. Don't forget Touched by Type 1, touchedbytype1.org, and on Facebook and Instagram. All right, we're going to get right back to Erika. I think I cry later in this one, so bonus.
Like what? Do you want to share?
I definitely think I look taller than I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small one. Mm-hmm. I've told myself that I carry my weight better than my size, which is not true. That's not if I looked at myself reasonably, I'd be like, oh, I should lose 20 pounds. But I've taught myself that I have broad shoulders, or that, you know what I mean? Little stuff like that. It's okay, mm-hmm. because I can carry it up here, and it's mm-hmm. visually, it's okay. And it runs along the same lines. This one actually happens to be reasonably true. But the mechanism's similar. I look younger than I am. And somehow I'll talk myself into making that think I am younger than I am, but I'm not. I just mm-hmm. appear younger. If you meet me at first and you'll look at me and I mean, be honest.
No, he's 35. He's 35. Yeah.
I could pass for 40, right?
Right.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. And so, and then I start talking and I'm goofy, and then people shave off years for that because they think like an adult wouldn't speak like this. and that's all lovely and everything, but my knee still hurts and my back is stiff, and I still go outside sometimes to do something and go to lift something up and think, man, you should not pick this up.
Right.
But I feel I've talked myself into believing I'm younger than I am. That's all. And even like there are times all right, okay. There are times
I'm like, pause. Do you want to share this?
there are times that I hear things on this podcast that somebody's sharing as a negative that they've learned how to get past, for instance. And I'll think, oh God, I do that sometimes.
Yes.
And then I can picture where in my life I do it. And then I don't do anything about it. Right. But one of the things that I'm disappointed with myself all the time, I fixed last week. So
that's exciting.
It was. But it always, as everything else, ended with me crying. But hold on a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I grew up as not a person who makes eye contact during conversation. And I recognized it as a younger person, as a younger adult, and I ignored it. And I told myself, it's okay, because when you talk to people, you're entertaining the group. You know what I mean? Like you're doing, because I can be that person in a group where I'm like, you're looking here, you're looking there. And sometimes you just talk, but I don't look people in the face. And I decided to do something about it when I recognized one day, it's the silliest thing, but my son used a pacifier for the first couple of years of his life. And then when he stopped using it, I had this horrible feeling that I had missed what his face looked like while he was using it. If this makes sense or not. And I thought, I'm having conversations with people and I'm not looking at them. I'm like not seeing their face. And so I started to more, constructively say to myself, like, you have to look people in the eye. And in the beginning, it was hard. Like, I don't know.
I bet.
Oh my God. And then I got past that. I'm like, okay, it's not trouble for me to look you in the face anymore. And that's the thing that I do now. So now fast forward, my son gets his first real job and we have to take him far away to set him up for his first real job. And I get there with him on a Wednesday and I'm going to leave on a Saturday, and we're very busy. We're buying furniture and like getting his cable turned on and getting him food and buying him pots and pans, like everything. He had
all the adulting things.
Nothing.
Yes.
He had nothing, Plus he's not sure he's going to be there for very long. So we're trying not to like overload him with stuff, like you don't need 7 pans. Like here's a couple I think you'll be okay with. And as this time's going on and we're spending it together, I keep thinking, I'm going to leave in a couple of days. I'm going to leave in 4 days. I'm going to leave in 3 days. I'm upset. I don't want him to be upset. So I'm not going to tell him I'm upset. And finally I thought, that's not right. Like, that's not right. He needs to know how upset I am that I'm leaving him here. So I said to him, I want you to know that over the next couple of days, you are going to look up at me and it's going to seemingly be out of nowhere. And I'm going to be crying. And I was like, and it's not because I'm sad. This is such a great opportunity for you. You're going to do great at this. I'm not worried about you. It's nothing like that. And I said, I could tell you that I'm going to miss you, which would be true. I was like, but the core thing here, and I said, and it's me, I don't want to leave you here. And I think it's because my dad left me. I said, I think that's why this is. I feel like I'm abandoning you here. And I'm like, I know I'm not. I'm like, you're going to be great, but I don't want to stand here swallowing all that and us to just have these awkward moments together because you're looking at me and I'm thinking, oh my God, what are you doing? Take him home. Don't leave him here. Like, don't leave him here the way somebody left you. Like, don't do that. Plus I'm adopted. So technically I've been abandoned twice, so I'm like, I'm sitting there having that thought. I'm like, I'm going to share this with him instead. And my son is like my wife. Like, they have the Irish thing going. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the house is on fire. dead bodies are falling all around you, and they're like, this is going to be fine. Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Let's not show like anything. But I could look at him sometimes, and he looked like he was 5 in his face because he was worried. Not about me, by the way, about this whole thing.
Right.
And so I'm like, we're adults, and I don't want there to be any confusion here. I don't want him to think my dad's mad or sad or scared that I'm going to suck at this or something. I'm like, just going to let him know why I might be acting strangely. So I did that. And then, and he gave me a nice hug, and we sat together for a minute. And then when I went to leave, I cried.
Yes.
And he was uncomfortable, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'll be okay. And then to finish the story out, like, I got in the car, I had to drive away, and I screamed a couple of times, like in a very not focused primal way. I had to stop myself from like not living outside of his door for the rest of my life, I guess. And I kept going, and I did the same thing. This is going to sound so strange, that I learned in Dr. Sarno's book about back pain. I just told myself it was going to be okay. That the things that I was worried about, they weren't real. I reminded myself about the good situation he was in, and that this was going to be okay. But I'll tell you that I had to drive from his house to my daughter's, which is a different story, college. So I was in the car for 3 hours by myself. And about 45 minutes into it, I thought, I need to call somebody who loves me. And I called my brother, and my brother and I chatted about this a little bit and then something else, because I was making myself upset. And you know what I mean? So anyway, I don't remember why we started talking about that, but
no, but that's such a beautiful gift you gave your son, and just being authentic with how you feel. I think often as parents, and connecting this to diabetes, I think often we feel like many caregivers will share with me that they feel like they don't want to cry in front of their child. They don't want to make it feel like worse than it is. But I think that's okay. It gives them permission to be upset or cry. So I think you gave him the gift of like being authentic with how you're feeling in the moment. And then you worked your way through interrupting those lies of that narrative that you had experienced with your father, and you were breaking that cycle. And also replacing it with truth, that it is going to be okay. This is not the lie that your brain is like flirting with, like, this is not the truth. The truth is you love him. You've set him up for success. You're not abandoning him. And you reminded yourself of all those truths. And then you did something that helped you feel better, reach out to to feel connected with a loved one. So you worked yourself through some of those techniques all by yourself. You did reality checking, all those things. Well,
a couple of them were just out of like sheer necessity.
Yeah, right.
Because as I was when my wife and I didn't get pregnant on the first time on purpose. And so it was a shock. We'd been married for a couple of years. We were talking about having kids, but we did not purposely get pregnant with Cole. And then in the months leading up to her having the baby, we started talking about daycare. And I was the one that said, I don't think I can leave the kid in daycare. It feels like I told her back then, we were so young. I said, it feels like we bought a puppy to put it in a kennel. Like, that's what it felt like to me. And I was like, so I said to my wife, I'm like, you should stay home with the baby. She laughed at me because I had no prospects for any kind of reasonable work. and she was doing pretty well. And then she said, you should do it. I think you'd be a good stay-at-home dad. So there's something, I don't care what anybody says. Like, I had to make a number of adjustments in how I was raised and how I grew up. The first one was in the first year he was alive. I realized that my wife would be doing things almost naturally that I didn't know to do, and that I had to sort of give myself over to this if he was going to be served in a way that he needed, right? And plus I was cheating myself because I was just caregiving, and my wife was being cheated because she wasn't having this connection with my son. I was like, well, I'm going to at least honor all of this if I'm going to do this. And that was kind of my first leap. But then when you do that and you just give yourself over to it, when you go from being a guy who was like raised to like, go kill something and find a pretty girl and get her to have sex with you and then buy a car. Like, you know what I mean? And like go dominate things. And like when you're raised like that, you know, being at home with a baby day to day, I don't know if anybody's ever done it, but it's a lot. And it's monotonous and you have to find joy in it. You have to find joy in things that you can't imagine there's joy in at some point. And then that just bonds you together with that kid in a way that I'm standing there now thinking, I know he's been out of college for 7 months. He needs to get the hell out of here. Like he was starting to get stir crazy, you know? And all this is good for him. And all I could think was, I think I could afford for him to live here longer. Like, why would it matter if he stayed here? Like, because the house is very still without the kids. It's a weird feeling. It's not good. And my wife and I seem to be doing okay with it. But as I was in his apartment, I was like, why don't I just tell him, like, he doesn't want to do this. Like, he doesn't really want to be an adult. Like, I could throw some money around. I'll take another advertiser and I'll keep him in my house forever. You know what I mean? Or something like that. And not to say that out loud was hard. But anyway, we were talking about how to break things that you don't want to do.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry. So all of you who are telling yourself.
Thank you for sharing. Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, it's a good, I think you modeled a lot through all that you shared.
Does any of that help people who are lying to themselves about why they're okay with their current situation? I hope it does.
Well, I think you modeled, you know, that is it healthy to listen to the lie? No, yeah. And you have done the work. You know, I don't know if you've been in therapy or you've done it yourself or you've read books, but you are learning and applying how to interrupt those lies and that pattern thinking that you were exposed to as a child.
In the car, in the drive, before I called my brother, it was fascinating. By the way, I mean, I did a tiny bit of therapy for like a year when I was in my 20s. Other than that, I'm embarrassed about how few books I've read. As a matter of fact, once when I was on a book tour for my book, my publisher said, "Stop telling people you don't read." But I'm in the car and I'm like, it's okay. And I'm calm and I'm okay. And then in no time at all, if I were to just think of him, then it burns like up through your chest, through your neck, into your head. And it's not a voice like a voice in your head, but you start thinking like, no, that's not right. I'm leaving him there. At one point, I solidly imagined that I had just left him in a box. You know what I mean? Like I had driven to another state, put my son in a box and I left is how it kind of felt to me. And then I'm like, okay, don't think that. And don't think that for your own sanity and for his happiness, because this is the game, right? Like you make a baby, you put it in a situation and then
you launch.
Yeah, go.
He launches. Yeah.
Right. It's unfair to me and to my wife. And these little bastards have abandoned us again. It's fine. But it's the right thing, you know? And so I don't know, like I did later, it's because of this podcast, because of talking to so many people, you keep kind of running through ideas in your head. And I thought to myself, there were a number of times in that car that there was a dark path in front of me that if I didn't avoid it, I could see how people run down them and get lost. Do you know what I mean? And then that made me feel badly for people who get drawn down those paths. And I felt lucky to not have that happen to me, honestly.
So yeah, so you were able to interrupt that spiral, right? The spiraled thinking of that life feels like it's over, it's not worth living, and you were able to find something within yourself, like, okay, now's the time I need to reach out to somebody, and that's hard for people to do.
Yeah,
when they're really in that low place of that really low depressed thinking, and they kind of spiraled down. To do what you did, it can be really challenging for people. And you also, it kind of feels like, you grounded yourself to the present moment. Whether you're in the car, you have to paying attention to what you're doing. And that's something that people can do when they're in the middle of that spiral and feeling like there's, no hope. to ground yourself to the present. Maybe it's looking at three. There's all sorts of techniques. You can Google them for grounding techniques, but looking at three things that you can see, two things that you can touch, one thing that you can hear. It doesn't really matter which way you go, but like bringing yourself to the present moment to interrupt that spiral can be helpful.
It's I'll tell you where it helped the next day. So to give a little bit of context, through odd circumstances, my son had to be in a part of, I think I'm supposed to say Arden's in Chicago in college. So,
okay.
She joked one time on the podcast. She's like, if people ask, just tell them I'm in Chicago. She's not.
Okay.
Basically my son needed to be across the country in the same state that my daughter was in, but 3.5 hours from each other in this state. And they had to leave on the same day, and they had to start either class or their job on the same day. So I had to leave him that night to drive the 3.5 hours to where my wife was with my daughter so that we could drive home. Right.
Right.
And it's a 14-hour drive home. And so I get to her, she's in a hotel, my wife. And I'm like, I don't know when I get there, maybe midnight, because I kept hanging on. I was supposed to go have dinner with my daughter, and I couldn't leave my son. I was like, I can't. I texted Kelly. I'm like, I can't make myself leave. Like I'm trying, And so I missed dinner, which then I felt bad about that. But I'm sure they all sat around and joked that Dad's crying right now. He can't come to dinner, which would have been right. And so I get to the hotel. My wife's already in bed. It's late, and I laid down and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I did the wrong thing. I did the wrong thing. And then I get really emotional. Like I'm okay with it now. And I'm still upset right now. Right. Like, so I'm like, I did. She's like, no, you didn't. And I was like, no, I did. I left him there. I was like, I shouldn't have done that. And so I got through that. Okay. And then the reason I'm sharing that with you is because the next day when I said goodbye to Arden after lunch, she's like, it's okay if you want to cry. I'm like, I'm okay. Then she was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Where are the tears, Dad?
Like, you're the guy that cries and lets me know I'm going to be missed. Like, when is this happening? Mom's over there like an Irish statue, like getting ready to go. Where are you? And I just said, I told her, I was like, she's like, you're going to cry. I'm like, I'm not. I'm like, this is a good spot for you. I'm like, it's okay. And I'm like, I'm really upset that I'm not going to see you, but I don't think I'm going to cry. And she was like, all right, like you should have seen her. Like, she was like a little let down, but she's like me. So she was, I don't know, she was joking with me. And I got a little teary and I said, I am really going to miss you. And, we'll be back to visit in a few months. And I left and we got out in the hallway and Kelly's like, you didn't cry. And I was like, I think I figured it out last night, So anyway, I don't know why I just really, to bring this back around, if you are saying, I don't let diabetes slow me down because your variability is good and you don't get low when you're out playing soccer, or you figured out how to eat, I don't know, cheese fries without spiking for 3 hours, then diabetes isn't slowing you down. And that's amazing. But if you are one of the people that I've spoken to who said diabetes isn't slowing me down, and there's a lot more to that sentence that you're not sharing, I hope that you can find a way to push through that stuff and get to a place where you really are. It's a word people dance around all the time, and I don't understand why they do. People try not to say control around diabetes, but I mean, I'd like for you to get into a better decision-making tree so that you have outcomes, you know what I mean? That are more reliable.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that, your story with your precious children. I think the mindset of diabetes isn't going to stop me. That can also be like a family culture mindset that maybe is expressed at diagnosis because they want to instill hope that this, you can still play the sports and you can still do all the things, and you can eat the cake and you can get married and have babies if you're, want to and can. I think that that mindset, it can be healthy, but it also can prevent the space for the emotional processing, which, okay, diabetes is not going to stop me, but dang, I'm really sad and angry. Why did I get this? And if there's no space for that expression of frustration, then maybe you just adopt the diabetes isn't going to stop me. I can't let it stop me. But I still have all these other feelings, and I don't really know how to control it.
Yeah.
So I think what start off maybe as a really positive, hopeful mindset of your family system, it can maybe wreak havoc on how you process it as a child or teen or young adult or a grown adult, and interfere with how to actually manage, control your sugars.
I think it also matters as you're talking, like in my mind, I'm imagining it matters who you are too. Like, because there are certain people who hear that and they were always going to be the people it wasn't going to get in the way of, right? Like there are certain people who were just going to be like, it didn't matter what happened to them. They were going to like pop out of it,
right.
with a 2% body fat with a shine on them. Just like, I look amazing. This is going my way. Like there's some people who just, that works for them. I wonder if it's not a blanket statement that's given at the beginning. And if you don't know that when it's happening, like what happens when someone says, don't worry, this isn't going to get in your way, when you know about yourself, you are the kind of person who falls down rabbit holes and things get in your way, then it just probably feels like a lie. It probably feels empty. Like when my wife sometimes, like when my son was looking for a job, anything he applied for, she'd like, you'd be good at that. And she's like, Mom, I've not said one thing yet that you were like, no, don't do that. She's like, you're my mom. This is what you're going to say. My wife later said to me.
Cheerleader, yeah.
Yeah, my wife later said to me, there was something he applied for. I was like, well, that would not be good for him. but she didn't tell him, right? But I wonder, like, we are who we are. And a platitude, which is really what this is, right? Don't worry. Plenty of people. First, let's list some famous people we know who have type 1 diabetes. Right, I bet you didn't know that this guy had it. And Bobby Clark for the Flyers. You're like, wait, you're bringing up 70s hockey? Like, okay. And it didn't stop him and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's meant that way. But I think some people hear that. Now that I've spoken to more people who have more of a depressed mindset, they probably hear that and think, oh, it's going to get me. Like I'm not going to be the one. And then the person who gives you the platitude is like, oh, well, I did my job. I told him it's not going to stop him. And then the people who aren't stopped by it were never going to be stopped by it to begin with. It's like me taking credit for being able to work through this complicated thing that might have fell somebody else. Like, I can't take credit for that. That's just how my brain works. Like my brain could work a different way and I could have driven my car into a tree, and just been like, everything's over. So, oh, Erika, every time we get down to these conversations, I realize there's no answer. I think sorry.
No, it's complicated, right? It's your mindset, it's your family upbringing, your culture, I know we've talked about this a lot about like, what is it your resilience and what does that actually mean? How is that nature versus nurture, all of those things.
Right.
But I think, being mindful of, is it a platitude and how is that landing for whoever you're sharing that with is really important to remember.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a healthcare provider or you're the parent or a loved one of somebody who's been diagnosed, like you can't just run around being like, don't worry. And there are also people who you can't pile on them like, oh my God, there's a lot to worry about here. Like, it's equally as bad for that person. And who's who in that scenario? And by the way, most of y'all listening, you don't even know who you are in that scenario. You think you do, but you're often not the person you think you are. Like sometimes you think, oh, I can handle this. But I mean, I talk to plenty of people who get caught up in almost like OCD like rituals about keeping their kids safe. And, they say things that are, I mean, one of the things we'll talk about in another episode is how, like, you see online, somebody says something and then they get attacked. And if you really look at it, you realize the person attacking them is trying to quell a fear in their own mind. And like, so you're not always who you think you are. I'm not who I think I am, so it's interesting.
We're all on a journey of becoming more self-aware, but
I'm
Yeah,
trying.
to be aware that you're not self-aware is the first step, perhaps.
I used to, I don't know, this is completely inappropriate, so I won't say it. Well, now I'm going to say it because I thought of it. When I was younger and somebody would be like, what's with that person? I'd say, listen, crazy people don't know they're crazy. You got to cut them a break, you know? And now I've come to realize, like, none of us really know ourselves that well. And, you know, it's just, you're trying to figure it out as you go. Like when it hit me, I was like, oh, I'm upset because I feel abandoned. I was like, that's why I don't want to do to my son the worst thing that's ever happened to me, even though that is not what's happening right now. And it was, you know, fascinating. So,
but that's so profound that you were able to make that connection. I am feeling this way because I was treated this way, but this is not what's happening now. I mean, those two sentences, I don't know how you got there, but that's pretty profound and hard to do for many people.
Well, it was self-preservation because I thought my heart was going to explode. And I'm not prone to like panic attacks. So there was going to be no outlet for it.
Right.
Like I felt like I was going to explode, you know? So, and it's just, I don't know. Like, I just thought like, I've got to figure out what this is, or I'm going to like, I felt like I was going to die. Like, I know I wasn't going to, but it felt like that. Like,
and that's what people say who feel like they're having a panic attack is that they feel like they're going to die. And truly they believe it and they feel it.
Yeah. I didn't get to that part. I was just I've got to like figure this out. Like I did my best to step out of myself.
I was going to ask more questions around that, but I was going to ask, have you had those connections, those thoughts before of like, this is why I feel this way because of abandonment?
No, that was the first time.
That was
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, oh, this is because my dad left shit. And I was like, okay. Like, the adopted thing is like, I joke about it a lot here. Like, I really don't think about it ever. But if I start thinking about my dad leaving, it's not lost on me that he's the second father that apparently was okay with being like, he'll be all right. And, you know, like, and because that is, and then I look back on leaving my son at college. Maybe I'm lying. The first time I left my son at college, I found myself wondering how my dad could have left me. Like, I didn't put it together yet. I asked the question of myself, like, if this is what it felt like to leave my son somewhere safe that was good for him, how could my dad have left? But I quickly transitioned into, he must really not care about me. Like, because if he felt this way, how could he have gone?
How would he have done it?
Yeah. Right. And so, but I never got past that. And that was 4 years ago. So this was the first time I've thought about it since then. And it was because it was more, it's finite. Like for all of you who have young kids, like the college thing, it hurts, but then they come back like a bunch of times a year or they'll play a sport or you'll go there or something like that. You actually end up seeing each other more frequently than you think, as long as it's not like great distance away. But this thing, I thought like he could be good at this. They could offer him a different position. He might never come back here. He might never live. He might never live in my house again. And I know some people are like, I don't know how everybody feels about their kids. I like my children. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I like them being here. They bring something to the conversation. It makes me, all right, I'm going to tell you one more thing. So the other night, I cook for people. I don't know what that says about me. I don't love food myself, but I like cooking for other people. And I make cookies every once in a while. And sometimes nobody even eats them, and I don't care. I love making them for people. Like, I see, like, my kid pull a cookie out, and I'm like, this is great. Like, you know, it feels good. So we have these boxes of, and when your kids leave, they always forget something. So we have the, like, forgotten boxes that have to be UPS to people. And I said to my wife, I'm like, I'm going to make some cookies, and I'm going to put them in the boxes. My son's stuff, my daughter's stuff, and my son's girlfriend, who left a hair straightener here. Apparently it's my job to send to her, but I'm like, I'm going to give her some cookies too, right? So, so the other night, I got my work done and I thought, oh, I'm going to make the cookies now. And I made them. And as I was halfway through it, I felt bereft. And my wife's like, "Are you okay?" And I just go, "It doesn't feel the same." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, "Making the cookies doesn't feel the same." And I was like, "I don't know why. It's hollow." And I'm so fucking annoyed. I just want to throw them away. It was like, I don't care that I'm sending them to them. I don't care that they're going to get them. I don't care if they'll like them. Like I couldn't, there's one for you. I can't figure that one out yet. Like I'll get to it, but it felt weird and I didn't like it is the best thing I can tell you. So anyway, you can probably tell me
that feels like, it's grief. You're grieving,
it's terrible.
Yes.
Oh my
God. It is painful.
I did eat the cookies later, just so you know. I mean, I sent them some, but I was like, I'm keeping a couple of these for me.
Oh.
Anyway, do you think people listen to this and think, wow, Scott's found a way to trick this woman into giving him free therapy?
I don't know. I haven't actually signed a consent form, so I don't know.
It's hilarious.
I hope not.
Did this conversation do justice to the idea of that I brought up in the beginning? I don't.
What was the idea?
I don't let diabetes slow me down.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Gosh, I mean, perhaps we probably could even do a part B. I feel like dissecting it further if we wanted, but I think it was a good conversation.
Yeah. I listen to. It's going to feel weird that I shift gears like this so quickly because I was legitimately just crying a little while ago. But I think about this podcast the way I think about my kids and the way I think about everything. Like as I'm bringing up stories about myself, they are absolutely true stories, but in my mind, they're going to move this conversation and the people listening in a certain direction. So I am a tiny bit Machiavellian about it, which is bizarre because I'm an idiot, Erika, but I'm good at this. So let's just all get past the fact that I can't add or subtract, but this thing I might be pretty good at. So
oh my gosh.
I really feel very strongly about it. Like that statement, every time someone says it, it's like a bell rings in my head. I was like, somebody needs to do something about that. Like, people can't live their whole life celebrating that they're ignoring their body deteriorating, but at least they went to Burning Man. You know what I mean? Like, cause that is how it feels to me when it's said sometimes. And it doesn't need to be that way. If you're strong enough to ignore high blood sugars and all the horrible things that come with it to go do the things that you really want to do, then damn it, you're strong enough to figure out how to get your blood sugar lower to begin with, And I don't know. And I just feel like, that there's a conversation somewhere that'll spark somebody into doing that thing. And if I've got to lay my soul out so that you people take better care of yourself, then that's what I'm going to do. Because obviously, at the end of this, years from now, Erika is going to tell me that I'm making this podcast to take care of myself because I feel like nobody took care of me or something like heady like that. Like on the last day, I'm going to be leaning in the microphone and be like, go ahead, go on. All right. Yeah, that sounds right. Is there in the last minute, just to tease it out for the next episode, there's something about how I grew up that leads me to want to help other people, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. You have a helper mentality. Yeah. You want to pay it forward in a way that maybe you didn't receive as a child. Well, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't know. I think I'd prefer to have the guy at the club mentality. Like those people look like they're having a great time. It's like it's Friday night. They're a little high. They're dancing. I've never done that in my life. I'm busy making sure people have cookies.
Well, I think I wanted to add to Scott that I think the people who are maybe saying, that diabetes isn't getting in the way, I think they ultimately want to though. Yeah. They want to know how to manage their diabetes. And so what is that? That's the fascinating piece of like, what is blocking that? Because I think they don't want to ignore it because they ultimately know what's happening to their body.
Oh, I truly believe that. I don't think that I've ever spoken to anyone who doesn't care.
Yeah.
Never once. They have varying degrees of success. They have varying degrees of guilt. They have varying degrees of stress. But in the end, it's that thing you said once, God, about burning out. And that it's that the hardest part is that you're trying so hard over and over and over again, and you're not getting a result. Like that's what burnout is. Like it's not the end when you give up. It's the part where you're like, I don't have the right tools. Like somebody gave you a screwdriver to like put in a nail, and you get up every day and spend 24 hours trying to make that screwdriver into a hammer. It doesn't work, And anyway, I that's how it strikes me, is that I've never once talked to somebody with diabetes who I thought, oh, they don't care. I've never thought that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I don't think you do either. I think it's just that's where, the empathy piece is of like, I know they want to change. And, I hope that they are able to find what is that piece that's preventing them from getting to that place of acceptance. Yeah. It's hard.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. I hope, I hope everybody appreciates me giving myself up like this to help because there's in the middle. I'm like, why am I doing this? like why am I? Because a lot of people are going to hear this, and I'm just like, I'm crying in the car and screaming and blah blah blah. And anyway, all right. Well,
I don't think people talk about the empty nest stage very much. So I think you probably normalized a lot of people's experience in a really healthy way.
Listen, I'm going to tell you something. The hardest thing I did in the last week was turn my wife down when she was like, we could have another baby. And I was like, ooh, no. I was like, that's not okay. I was like, that kid would end up really poorly raised. I was like, I'm way too old for this now. It's, I at first thought that it was the pass of time that I was upset about. And there is some of that. Like, I just, like, at one point, my son's like, what's wrong? And I said, I didn't think my life would go by this quickly. And I just, like, I'm like, I always knew we were going to get here. I just don't understand how it's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all. Because I can see him in my head at, like, different stages of his life. And I was like, how did we get past that so quickly? Like, how did it's just the weirdest thing about time. A day takes forever. A week takes forever. A month goes by. And and you're like, oh, it's New Year's Eve again. Like, but how's that possible? Because every day felt like it took forever, Anyway,
well, you're encouraging me. I'm gonna go be very present and focused with my children today and appreciate where they are.
I'm sure they'll bother the hell out of you in 15 minutes. You'll be like, I gotta get out of here. But you're very welcome. Well, a huge thanks to Erika for coming on the show again and sharing her insights with us. Don't forget, erikaforsyth.com is where you can find her. And I have it here somewhere. If you live in California, Utah, Oregon, and Florida, you can use Erika. And she's adding more states all the time, so keep checking back at erikaforsyth.com. I'd like to thank the Contour NEXTONE blood glucose meter. Why am I thanking a blood glucose meter, you say? Well, for sponsoring the Juicebox Podcast and for being amazing. ContourNext.com/Juicebox. Get yourself an accurate, reliable, and easy to carry meter. Hey, if you enjoyed this, you should check out the private Facebook group for Juicebox Podcast. It's called Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes, and there are over 33,000 members in there. People just like you talking about using insulin and all of the things that go with that. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. If you're looking for more episodes with Erika, go to juiceboxpodcast.com. Scroll to the top in the menu and check that mental wellness series. You'll find a whole bunch of stuff there with Erika. Though that was two very clunky sentences, but I don't have it in me to re-record them. So juiceboxpodcast.com, mental wellness, more stuff with Erika. Head on over. Again, thanks for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode.